The rain had just stopped, leaving the city streets slick and glistening beneath the neon lights. Inside a high-end martial arts academy that catered to the city's elite, murmurs filled the air. The room smelled faintly of leather gloves, mats, and sweat. Onlookers gathered near the sparring cage, their faces lit with anticipation. Something unusual was about to happen. At the center of it all stood Adrian Cole, a single dad and decorated veteran who had left the military years ago after tragedy struck his family. His tall, battle-hardened frame carried an aura of discipline, but his eyes told a deeper story, of grief, resilience, and silent strength. Since retiring, Adrian had been working odd jobs to support his daughter, Lily, a bright 12-year-old who was his entire world. Teaching martial arts at the academy was one of the few steady incomes he could rely on. But tonight wasn't a normal evening at the academy. Tonight, a billionaire had arrived, Celine Hayes, widely known as the Lady Biker Billionaire. She was a striking woman in her early 30s, notorious for her rebellious nature, fast motorcycles, and fiery temper. Her empire stretched across luxury motorcycles, racing events, and high-tech engineering companies. She wasn't just rich, she was untouchable. Yet she had an appetite for challenges that shocked people, and tonight she had chosen to step into a martial arts sparring cage against none other than Adrian. The whispers grew. Is she serious? One student muttered. She can't really think she stands a chance against a veteran. She's a billionaire, she doesn't care, this is just for show. Celine, dressed in sleek black athletic gear with streaks of scarlet along her gloves, exuded confidence as she tied her hair back. Her custom helmet rested nearby, polished and engraved with her company's emblem. She stepped into the cage like she owned it, eyes locked on Adrian with a mixture of mischief and determination. "You're Adrian Cole, right?" she asked, her voice calm but edged with arrogance. "Yes," Adrian replied, nodding slightly. His tone was measured, respectful, yet firm. "They say you're unbeatable, ex-special forces, decorated veteran, father, teacher." She smirked. "I like to test limits. And tonight, I'm testing yours." The crowd gasped at her audacity. Adrian simply tilted his head, studying her posture, her stance, the way her fists clenched. He didn't mock her, he didn't underestimate her, but inside, he wondered why a billionaire would risk her pride in front of strangers. "This isn't a game," Adrian said finally. "Sparring is about respect, not ego. If you're here to put on a show, I won't entertain it." Her smirk faded slightly, and for a moment, the fire in her eyes softened. "Then let's make it about respect. Show me what real discipline looks like, veteran." The bell rang. The first exchange was cautious. Celine moved fast, her biker reflexes sharp, but Adrian's defense was calm, almost effortless. He blocked, sidestepped, and redirected, letting her burn energy while observing. Every strike she threw carried determination, but also frustration when she couldn't break through his guard. "You're holding back," she snapped after a flurry of failed strikes. "And you're fighting angry," Adrian replied evenly. "That's how you lose." The room was silent, every spectator glued to the scene. It wasn't just a spar, it was a clash of two worlds. Celine's jaw tightened. She lunged again, but this time Adrian countered, catching her wrist and guiding her momentum harmlessly to the mat. She hit the ground with a thud but quickly rolled back to her feet. Instead of humiliation, a strange smile spread across her face. "That's what I came for," she whispered. Minutes turned into half an hour. Adrian never struck her with full force, only demonstrating control, balance, and precision. Celine, drenched in sweat, kept pushing. Every time she was knocked down, she got back up. Her body bruised, her pride tested, but her spirit refused to quit. By the time the final bell rang, Celine was on one knee, breathing heavily, her hands trembling. Adrian extended his hand to help her up. For a long moment, she just stared at it, then finally, she took it. The crowd erupted into applause, not because of who won, but because of the transformation they had just witnessed. "You could have humiliated me," Celine said, her voice hoarse. "But you didn't." "Why?" "Because real strength isn't about breaking someone," Adrian answered softly. "It's about helping them rise." Her eyes glistened for a split second before she turned away. Nobody had ever spoken to her like that, not her board members, not her rivals, not even her closest friends. As the spectators dispersed, Celine stayed behind. Adrian packed his gear quietly, ready to leave, when her voice stopped him. "I want to know more," she said. "About your discipline. About you." Adrian hesitated. "Why?" "Because tonight, for the first time in years, I felt something real, Celine admitted. And I don't want to lose it. The night after the sparring match, Celine Hayes couldn't sleep. For years, she had chased thrills, motorcycles at 200 miles per hour, boardroom battles with billionaires twice her age, and reckless stunts that made headlines. But none of it lingered in her heart the way Adrian Cole's quiet strength had. His words echoed. Real strength isn't about breaking someone. It's about helping them rise. Celine wasn't used to feeling small. Yet, around him, she didn't feel belittled, she felt grounded. The following week, Celine showed up at the academy again. This time, without her entourage, without cameras. Just her. Adrian was teaching a class of kids, guiding them patiently through forms and discipline. Celine leaned against the doorway, watching him kneel beside a boy who had trouble balancing. Adrian steadied the child gently, encouraging him with soft words. When the class ended, Adrian finally noticed her. "You're back," he said, wiping his brow with a towel. "I said I wanted to know more," she replied. "And I meant it." What began as occasional visits turned into regular appearances. Celine would sit quietly at the back of his classes, absorbing not just his techniques, but the way he lived his values. Sometimes, she stayed after hours, and they sparred again. But sparring wasn't just about fighting anymore, it became a silent conversation between two wounded souls. Slowly, Adrian learned more about her. Celine had built her empire from ashes. Her parents died in a motorcycle crash when she was 19. Instead of crumbling, she inherited their small garage and turned it into the foundation of a billion-dollar motorcycle company. But the loss hardened her. She trusted no one, loved no one, and masked her loneliness with adrenaline and power. Adrian, in turn, opened pieces of his past. He spoke of his late wife, who died when Lily was only a baby. He spoke of wars that left scars on his body and mind. He spoke of the nights he stayed awake, listening for his daughter's breath just to remind himself that love still existed in his world. Their conversations weren't romantic at first. They were raw, unpolished, and real. And for Celine, who had lived in a world of polished lies, it was everything. One evening, Celine finally met Lily. The 12-year-old bounded into the academy, her laughter echoing as she ran into her father's arms. Celine froze, unsure of what to say or do. But Lily, with the innocence only children possess, walked straight up to her. "You're the biker lady, right?" Lily asked, tilting her head. Celine chuckled nervously. "I suppose I am. My dad says bikers are reckless," Lily teased. "But he doesn't let me say it too loud." Adrian groaned. "Lily." Celine burst out laughing, the kind of laugh she hadn't felt in years. Lily grinned, and in that instant, Celine realized what was missing in her life wasn't thrill or money. It was family, but not everyone approved of their growing closeness. One night, Celine invited Adrian and Lily to a private gala she was hosting for her company. The event was filled with suits, investors, and high-profile guests. Adrian arrived in a simple suit, Lily in a modest dress. Their presence turned heads immediately. "Who are they?" whispered a woman dripping in diamonds. "A veteran, and his daughter," muttered another. "What is Celine thinking?" Halfway through the evening, one of Celine's board members, Marcus Vane, a ruthless man with ambitions to take control of her empire, cornered her. "Celine, this is bad for business," Marcus hissed. "You're parading around a nobody. Do you want investors to think you've lost your mind?" Before Celine could answer, Adrian appeared beside her. His posture was calm, but his eyes held steel. "With respect, sir," Adrian said evenly, "a man is not a nobody because he has less money. Respect comes from character." The entire table went silent. Marcus sneered. "And what exactly do you bring to this table, veteran? You think sparring tricks make you worthy of standing beside her?" Celine's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "He brings honesty, loyalty, and discipline, things money can't buy. Which is why he's worth more than every one of you combined." The room shook with murmurs. Investors gawked, and Marcus, humiliated, stormed out. But the real storm came later. Marcus, bitter from the public humiliation, plotted to expose Adrian. He dug into his past, twisting his military record, leaking exaggerated stories to the press about a broken veteran clinging to a billionaire. Tabloids ran with it, headlines screamed about their unlikely connection. Paparazzi camped outside Adrian's modest home. One morning, Lily came home from school in tears. "Dad, kids said you're only with her because she's rich. They said we're," she choked on her words, "charity cases." Adrian's chest tightened. He wanted to protect her from the cruelty of the world, but he couldn't shield her from everything. That evening, he confronted Celine. "This is hurting Lily," he said, his voice heavy. "I can't let her suffer because of me." Celine's eyes filled with panic. "So what? You're just going to walk away?" "I have to," Adrian whispered. "She comes first." For the first time in years, Celine's wall shattered. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Don't leave me too." But Adrian turned, and for a while, it seemed the bond they had built was over. Weeks passed. Celine buried herself in her empire again. Adrian focused on Lily, but something in both of them felt hollow, incomplete. The breaking point came during Celine's annual motorcycle showcase, where she unveiled her company's latest design. The event was broadcast live, thousands in attendance. But just as she began her speech, Marcus staged his move. He hijacked the spotlight, accusing her of being distracted, reckless, and unfit to lead, because of her relationship with Adrian. Gasps echoed through the hall. Cameras flashed. Investors stirred. Celine stood frozen, anger building in her chest. But before she could respond, a voice rang out from the back of the room. It was Adrian. He strode forward, Lily by his side, his presence commanding silence. He climbed onto the stage and took the microphone. "You all think strength is about money, power, or control," Adrian said, his voice carrying across the hall. "But real strength is standing by someone when the world tries to tear them down. Celine Hayes has more courage than anyone in this room. She's not reckless, she's fearless. She doesn't run from battles, she faces them. And she's taught me, and my daughter, that family isn't just blood, it's the people who choose to stay." The room erupted. Some cheered, others sat stunned. Marcus tried to cut him off, but Celine stepped beside Adrian, her hand finding his. Together, they faced the crowd, not as billionaire and veteran, but as equals. What unfolded shook the entire room. Investors began applauding, standing one by one. Cameras captured the moment, a billionaire not hiding behind wealth, but standing vulnerably beside a man who had nothing but honor. And in that moment, the narrative changed. Celine's empire didn't crumble, it soared, because the world didn't see scandal anymore. They saw authenticity. Later that night, as the lights dimmed and the crowds dispersed, Celine, Adrian, and Lily sat quietly on the rooftop of the venue, watching the city glow beneath them. Celine turned to Adrian. "You could have stayed away. Why did you come back?" Adrian smiled softly. "Because Lily reminded me of something. She said, 'Dad, you taught me that real fighters don't quit.' So why are you quitting on her?" Celine's eyes welled with tears again, but this time they were tears of healing. She reached for Lily's hand, then Adrian's. For the first time since losing her parents, she felt like she had a family again. And Adrian, who had carried years of loneliness, finally felt home.